Hi, this is Dr. Ryan Campbell. Today, let's talk about how to cut through a lot of the noise. And what I mean by that is the health information that's available on the internet right now can be overwhelming, right? So there's humongous volumes of opinions, and here I am. I'm going to throw mine right on top of that. But hopefully, what I'll convince you to do is to take all of it with a humongous grain of salt, and try and give you a compelling argument for why you should really focus on simplifying the things that you're trying to do, or to cut through the complex information that you might be getting, and figure out how to separate something that is worth trying or worth doing, and what type of stuff is likely noise and going to have little impact to your day-to-day and potentially to longevity. So one thing we know for sure in medicine is that the more we know, the less we understand. So for every question that we receive an answer for, as far as an explanation for what's happening in our bodies, we end up with 10 more questions, right? So it's kind of, what's that saying? So it's the more we learn, the less we know, and that is absolutely true when it comes to biology. So kind of the way that I view health and the human body and biology in general is I always kind of root my decisions in the understandings that we have that we feel pretty confident are true. So what I mean by that are, in every situation, considering the basics and considering the basics first. I'm not saying that there aren't disease pathologies that are more complex, but for the average person, it doesn't have to be that hard, I guess is my point. And I'll explain a bit more on why I believe that is. And so we think about kind of how do we define what's true in health? And we can point to research studies, we can point to intuition, we can look historically what we've just done. And I think a combination of that is always good, but what can be misleading though is that the research studies are limited, all of them, no matter how big they are, as far as creating general recommendations out of a diverse population, or not having a large enough population or sample size to actually reach a really compelling conclusion. And so the research is never perfect. And so with that in mind, I tend to take an approach, and I encourage you and my other patients to also think about health in the same way. It's what do we understand to be true? How am I doing in my own personal life as far as kind of fostering those truths of health? And how do I create a habit around improving some of those? So I have the opinion, we'll call it an opinion. I have an opinion that taking a supplement or medication to address a problem that's likely rooted in a day-to-day choice or decision or a habit, you should work on the habit, because what we don't understand, or when we take a very targeted approach to therapies, and let's take pharmaceuticals as an example, they're very targeted in how they work, and most medications work by inhibiting a particular process, and so they get in the way. And they can be kind of broad or have side effects, or they can be very targeted. And the best medications tend to be more targeted. However, that approach does not address the complexities within human biology and physiology and biochemistry. And so I tend to think of the human body more as like a web, a spider web. And so when you take a pharmaceutical and you pull on one of those strings, yeah, you're only addressing one of those strings, but you're sort of distorting the web in a particular direction by pulling on that. What I would suggest, or the way to think about health, is how do you build a better web? And if you need to just fix the web versus trying to distort it to make it look a little bit better, that's a better approach. And the other part of that is if you think of the human body as a system, you have inputs and outputs, and in the middle is the controller, right? And so I think that there's certain levers or inputs that you can put into the system that have more profound and more complex results that come on the other end. And these are kind of where the truths in human biology come into play, and sort of the hard-baked evolutionary biochemical processes and physiologic processes that happen that don't tend to change that fast. So when we look at our current living environment has changed more in the last 100 years, and I'd say even more rapidly over the last 50. But over the last 100 years, from the industrial period onward, has changed more than in the prior, couple 100,000 years, right? And that is not a time frame that allows our bodies to adjust to any sort of changes, right? So when we're thinking back, we're like, well, okay, we have a biology that's built for a certain time frame in history, and it is not this one. All right, so think back, and it's like we're carrying this genetic baggage, this evolutionary baggage from a period that is unrecognizable to what we're living in right now. But so what that means, though, and what the practical application of thinking about it in this way is that the safest bet, the best bet, the strongest lever to pull is going to be improving sleep, your diet, and moving your body, and addressing chronic stress. And then I would also, so the stress, and then I would say community. So we are communal beings. We're not meant to live in social isolation. And so those are the 5 basic truths. And then inside the community, I would lump like a sense of connection to the community, but also maybe spiritually or to nature. Because let's not forget, like, we are born of this earth. We rely 100% on what Mother Nature is able to provide for us. And so those are the 5 areas that I would suggest that you take a good hard look at and start there. Don't worry about whether you should be taking resveratrol for longevity. Don't worry if you should be taking extra vitamin C right now. That might help. More vitamin D. Yeah, that actually might help right now with the pandemic. We'll get around to that. But addressing sleep, this one is probably the biggest one that I see as issues in my patient population. We've been taught that sleep is optional, and that is absolutely not the case. And I think lack of sleep or poor sleep quality will impact all the others that I mentioned: the exercise, the diet, the stress level, the perceived stress level, and our connection to people around us, our community. When sleep is messed up, it's going to be really tricky to have the patience and the empathy and the understanding in order to maintain good, strong relationships. So those are kind of the 5 areas that I would suggest taking a good hard look at and decide which one seems to be most efficient, and do one thing to make it better, and do that one thing every single day for the next 60 days. I don't know, print out a chart that's got 60 boxes on it, put an X through it if you've committed to getting a little bit extra sleep or creating just a protected 8-hour sleep window and starting there, like, and committing to it. And there's some nuance there. You're not gonna sleep well if you're drinking caffeine until 7 or 8 p.m. at night, and then having a nightcap to come back down from getting amped up all day. And so there's there's a little more nuance and other things to consider, but that's the approach that I take with my patients when I sit down with them, and that's what I do in my own personal health. And if you can address these things, you will get kind of multiples of impact versus taking a multivitamin every day. So there's things that are easy to do that have low impact, or there's the hard, easy approach, meaning establish a good, healthy habit that might be a little trickier, but the payout on the back end over the coming months and then the years are going to compound, and you're way better off doing the hard, easy versus easy, hard. Those are my 2 cents. That's the place that I would start, and my hope is to start teaching you how to think like your own doctor, and to make good decisions about where the highest impact would be. And I'll tell you that I think the highest impact things that you can do are generally free and are based on choices that you're making day to day. And so pick one thing, do it for 60 days, and then if you've established that habit, then move on to the next one, and then kind of reevaluate where you're looking in those 5 different key aspects of health, and then go from there. So if you imagine every 60 days, if you break the year into a 60-day year, you're gonna end up with 6 new health habits and 5 days thrown in there to have a donut or something like that. But you imagine 6 new health habits over a 12-month period. Looking backwards, could be some significant impact, particularly if you're going to address some aspects of all 5 of those. Those all compound to the point that in 12 months, you're going to notice, hopefully, a big change when you're looking backwards. So that's my suggestion in how to simplify all of the crap that's available to you on Google. And a lot of it is unnecessary. Yeah, there might be some benefit, and you can always point to these small studies, particularly with supplements and stuff like that. But is that where you should be devoting time and resources? And in a lot of cases, I would argue no. So you're not going to be able to out-supplement a crappy lifestyle. Okay? That's my 2 cents, and I hope this is a good start, and gives you some food for thought. And let me know what information or questions you'd want me to answer in the comments below, and I'll start clicking through them. So my hope is over the next several weeks is that I'm gonna put out some content and videos that will kind of take a deeper dive into those five key areas, and some suggestions for each one. And so within sleep, there's going to be multiple layers to that, and sort of within there, you likely have some health habits around sleep that are great, but you may have some other areas to consider that might improve sleep quality. And we'll go from there. And then we'll start talking about diet, we'll talk about exercise, and we'll talk about stress management, and we'll talk about community, spiritual connection, connection to nature, connection to other people, connection to something, sense of purpose, that sort of thing. I think those are all key ingredients, and those are the largest, strongest levers that you can pull and kick the pants out of any sort of supplement that you might be taking currently. So let's move on.